Welcome back to What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur. I'm Vincent A. Lanci.
I am Mike Gorman.
Whether you're already an entrepreneur or looking to start your journey tomorrow, or are just someone who needs a little extra motivation to get through the day, this is the perfect podcast for you. Each week, I will interview a different entrepreneur from across the globe. I will continue to offer episodes in all industries to provide you with many different perspectives. You never know which motivational journey will inspire you most. Each guest will take you through their story and help you learn from their successes and lessons learned. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate the show 5 stars and continue listening by subscribing. It's time for another episode where we rewind the clock. My guest on the show today is a guest returning from season 1. Today's guest is from my hometown and was also the photographer for my book, Left for Dead, Story of Redemption's release up in New York. He is someone whose hard work was evident throughout the global pandemic as he provided his followers with announcement after announcement. At the time of his first recording during season 1, he was mainly focused on shooting weddings, which he has now booked months out. He has now taken his brand to a whole new level, including content creation for some major players. I am looking forward to hearing more about that when we hop into the discussion in a bit. So allow me to please introduce Mike Gorman. Mike, thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me. Fun fact, I've definitely been on a couple different podcasts over the years, but this is the first time I've ever been invited back on one. So historic moment for me, and I'm super proud to be back on.
Absolutely, man. Well, would you mind please reintroducing yourself to our listeners a little bit and previewing your story without giving too much away of your entrepreneurial journey's recent news?
Yeah, like you had mentioned, I run a wedding photography video company, and things were great. You know, getting better as we spoke the last time, and then obviously this pandemic sort of hit and sort of made me rethink everything. And so that's where we're here now. So I don't want to give too much away, but yeah.
I'm excited to dive back in, man. Thanks for coming back on. Your first episode was such a hit, so I'm excited to see where this one goes. As you remember, on each episode, I bring my guests through the Big Five, which is the same series of questions to help you, the listeners, learn what it's really like to be an entrepreneur. For Rewind the Clock episodes, we will have a Big Five all of its own. You ready to go, Mike?
Yes, sir.
Let's do it. So it's been a while since we last met. I'm very happy to see your continued success. Let's revisit the business you brought on the show on your first episode.
Okay, so the business was a wedding photography video company. And the business was a wedding photography video company, and basically we do events, right? So and events were one of the first things that got shut down since the pandemic. And so since this now, I've sort of had to step back and think, like, is this going to be a long-term viable business? Like, is this something that I want to do really forever? Like, you know, it's something that, because for the first time in my life, you know, I couldn't really control any aspect of my business. I felt helpless. You know, these weddings were getting canceled, and it wasn't my fault. It wasn't the couple's fault. It wasn't anyone's fault. So it was just sort of like made me rethink everything. Fortunately for my specific business, I didn't actually lose business. Nobody canceled weddings. They just postponed them till like 2021, 2022. So 2021 now 2022 were like double booked years for me, which is going to be really bad. Just something that I'm not overly happy about, because it's just not what I planned on, you know, but you know, that's the fun of being an entrepreneur, is there's so many things that you don't plan on, and you have to just sort of adopt and adjust. So.
Absolutely. So I've seen it personally because we follow each other on Instagram and the other networks. Let's talk about your new entrepreneurial endeavors that you've been involved on.
So I mean, basically, I had so much time over this pandemic, and so I just sort of started to think, like, you know, man, I have all these video skills and some other skills here and there, and I just sort of wanted to entertain people, you know, especially like during the pandemic. And I just felt like, you know, people just in a bad mood and whatever. And, you know, I had time, you know, and some money still coming in. So it's like, what better time to just try to entertain people. And so that's what I've been doing, and that's been really, really exciting and fun for me. And I think it's helped in all aspects of business, because I feel like, especially like with entrepreneurs, like smaller scale, like myself, people want like your personality and who you are as a person. So if you could give that to them, let people see a different side of you that's not all business, and maybe like have some fun. I think it helps.
I love it. So let's talk about some of the more viewed projects you've had. A couple of the more lasting impression ones you brought on me. I have a couple in mind. Let's talk about what went into those.
Well, the best one I think was it was called like New Yorkers Mid-Pandemic, and I just sort of it went for like the prototypical like New Yorkers, what they kind of said during pandemics, and just tried to like over exaggerate that to kind of be just this obnoxious like New York, quote unquote New Yorker, and so so that was like probably my favorite, and the one that's gotten me the most views.
Yeah, that was a good laugh for sure. Definitely made light of a terrible situation, but you did have all this time to create all this great content. Let's talk about exactly a little more in depth how COVID affected your first business. We know things have gotten delayed, but let's talk a little more about that.
Yeah, I mean, just delays. Yeah, like I'm in the, if you didn't remember from season one, if I said it earlier, but anyway, I'm in the wedding industry, right? So it's events, and these are the most important days of people's lives, something that people dreamed about their whole lives. So it's a really important industry and something that I love to be a part of. But then with this COVID thing, everything got canceled, and it's just sort of like, I don't know. I don't think anyone actually knows if the wedding industry will ever come back. I mean, people want to think there's going to be a vaccine or it's going to go away, and I hope it does. I really do. But it's not. There's no guarantees. And if we learned anything as entrepreneurs over this past couple of months, like, there's no guarantees in life. So I don't know. I mean, and I keep booking weddings for the future because people are still booking them. But if there's no vaccine or whatever, I don't know what's going to happen. And so I'm just now trying to be very malleable and just sort of not. I don't want to get too attached to any one thing right now. It's in the event space based off of what's going on. So
yeah, I can agree with you there, man. I've transitioned to virtual events, video conference events via Zoom for my mental health book, Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health. That's the route I'm taking, just having to pivot with the market. But let's delve a little deeper into your entrepreneurial experience, your life history, man. What is the best piece of advice you were ever given, and who is it from?
I don't know who it's from. It's funny, but I think that the main thing that I just try to live by is just that, it's success is not about the destination, it's about the journey, and so many times, at least myself, I get caught up in, not seeing results right away and just stressing out over just small things. And it's just, sometimes it's just important to just look back and just think like, yeah, like it's not about the destination. Like what we're doing right now in this moment, like this is the fun stuff, and it's just important to be in this moment, even if things are sucking and the government's shutting down your business for no fault of your own. You just have to just sit back and just sort of say like, this is the journey. This is the fun part. When we're old and gray, we're gonna look back at these moments. The ones where we were like fighting and in the trenches, not the ones where we like were successful and flying around on private jets. It's these moments that are the memorable ones. So.
I couldn't agree.
I don't know who said. Unfortunately, I don't know who said that. I think everyone says it, but
no, you're right. I actually have some content coming out based on that idea of you have to enjoy the process while you're doing it. I remember going for an MBA. I just was in the beginning. I was just so focused. I want this MBA. I want this, and then I had to slow down, take it back a notch, and enjoy the process that went through it. And now it's been the same for the business. You're going to be excited to see that content when it comes out. It's a lot of good stuff I've been putting together. But now, as entrepreneurs, you keep bringing up, we have to constantly learn, constantly pivot with the market. If you could recommend one book to our community of entrepreneurs, which book would it be? Who's the author? Let's talk about that.
Well, I'm a big podcast guy, not a huge reader. But the book, so I don't really read too many books, sadly. But the one book that I recommend to every single person, entrepreneur or not, is called *Sapiens* by I always forget how to pronounce his name, but it's by Yuval Noah Harari. The book is called *Sapiens*. And what this book is, it's basically, have you heard of it, Ben?
Keep going, yeah.
Yeah, so Sapiens is basically, it looks at humans starting from like before we were really humans as we know them today, like just hunter gatherers, and it sort of like talks about us as humans, like before we had technology, before we had all this stuff, and it just sort of shows us who our roots and who we really are under all the technology and underneath the cell phones and the 401ks and all these superficial things that kind of get in the way. I think it's really important to remember that we are a human species. We're animals, and some of this stuff's very unnatural for us, and it's just important to go back to that and just remember who we really are. So I think *Sapiens* is something that every single human should read.
I like what I'm hearing. I think I'm going to have to check it out. Mike, normally it would be time for the Spotlight Story, but instead, on Rewind the Clock episodes, I want to give the guest an opportunity to shout out and bring light to another entrepreneur's endeavors. Mike, who do you want to show some love to?
I guess my brother Dan, who's also been on the show. He also was able to take advantage of this time during the pandemic, and his company is doing amazing things, and he also started to make music, which is just incredible. So I'm really proud of him and what he's been doing. And I think the last time I said some stuff about Elon Musk, I always love Elon Musk. I'll always give him a shout out because I think he's pushing us further as a human species. So my brother and Elon, don't tell him I put him in the same sentence as Elon. He'll get but
yeah, that's funny. Well, he'll also be on to Rewind the Clock as well because, like you said, he's got a lot of stuff that's going on. But Mike, I got to thank you for coming back on the show. I know our listeners are going to see all the value in your episode today. I loved how you gave light to everybody during a dark time in the pandemic. You found a new way to get creative in a creative industry and create value, keep your followers and subscribers in the loop so you didn't lose any of them. I also love the advice you were given just to kind of bring it back to slowing down, live in the moment, and make it happen. But it is time for the last word. And I also do this on my other podcast series, A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci, too, because I want my listeners to really get to know my guests. Is there something that you would like to share with everybody listening on that we did not get to touch on yet today?
I mean, well, really living in the moment. Really living in the moment's a big thing. Don't get too caught up on the small things. Don't get too caught up on the small things, and always just think, is this what I'm doing? Is this making me happy? Is this life worth living?
I love that advice right there. Would you mind please now sharing your professional social media, your website, ways for our listeners to follow your endeavors, request your services?
Probably the best way is just to, find me on Instagram at Mike, the letter X Gorman, MikeXGorman.com, and fun little anecdote for everyone. I'm diving in headfirst to TikTok. So if you want to get on TikTok, you can catch me there.
Man, I wish I could. I downloaded it months and months ago, but it's just another thing I just never got around to it.
It's a lot.
I can imagine, but be sure to check out his social media and content, and it is social media time for the show, and we're on whichever platform you like to use. We're at What It's Really Like to Be an Entrepreneur on LinkedIn, at Your Favorite Morning Podcast on Instagram and Facebook, and at Podcasts by Lanci on Twitter, so you have updates from this show and A Mental Health Break with Vincent A. Lanci. If you check out my books, DM me. I would love to hear from you all. We have Mr. Lanci Talks Mental Health, Left for Dead, A Story of Redemption, and How to Transform Your Mindset When the Norm is Changed. All are on my website now, which is vincentalanci.com. As always, I will end the show with a quote that inspired me, and know it will for you too. And this one is from Ben Franklin. He said, either write something worth reading or do something worth writing. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all on the next episode.